Okay, this next topic that I'm going to share with you guys is called enlightenment. What is enlightenment? This is where we're going to have a conversation about what enlightenment is and helping you guys to understand the goal of the path to enlightenment. And it'll help you to more readily make your way to enlightenment. And then once you attain enlightenment, you'll know that you've actually attained it. It's important to start with helping you to understand that it's extremely challenging for the unenlightened mind to be able to understand what enlightenment is. One of the ways that people start to learn and understand what enlightenment is by experiencing it. The more you're experiencing the qualities of enlightenment, the more you understand what it is. It's kind of like, could you understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like without having ever tasted chocolate ice cream? You're going to need to taste chocolate ice cream in order to understand what chocolate ice cream tastes like. I could sit here and explain to you what chocolate ice cream tastes like all day long, but you're not going to fully appreciate it and understand it until you taste chocolate ice cream. And the same thing is true about enlightenment. I will explain to you about what enlightenment is, and you'll surely know more about it after we talk versus right now. Right after we have this discussion, you'll know more about what enlightenment is, but you just understand you won't fully understand what enlightenment is by the time we're done talking. That as you get closer and closer to enlightenment, you'll start to experience those qualities of enlightenment and know more and more and understand more and more of what enlightenment is. So feel free to ask any and all questions that you like as we go. Enlightenment is the ultimate goal of these teachings, and it would be what an individual's looking to work towards, is getting to enlightenment. But just understand that it's quite challenging for the unenlightened mind to fully understand it until you're experiencing it more and more. So what enlightenment is it's a mental state that you attain in this life or at death, where the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy. The mind has been purified of all the conditions that are producing the feelings such as anger, sadness, frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, loneliness, boredom, the resentfulness, the shyness, the displeasure. You've purified the mind through training the mind, and now the causes and conditions that are producing those feelings have been eradicated from the mind, so it's physically impossible for an enlightened mind to ever experience anger ever again once you've purified it of those conditions. So all discontentedness will be eliminated 100%. You'll notice the mind's concentrated, it's steady, it's focused, that you'll have this clarity of mind, that it's unshakable. There's nothing that you'll experience in life that will shake up the mind by the time you get to enlightenment. The being will have escaped the cycle of rebirth, and they won't experience a new rebirth or a new existence, because the same causes and conditions that are producing discontentedness are the same things that are producing this rebirth. So as you're making your way closer and closer to this peaceful and joyful mental state, you'll be able to see that that's what's occurring. This is the very unique thing about the teachings of the Buddha. As I mentioned, it's not about believe, and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're learning now, you're reflecting now, and you're practicing now. So you see the results now in this life. You can see that the condition of the mind is gradually improving if you're applying the tools and techniques and the practice that he's teaching. So you'll see that your mind's becoming less and less and less discontent. And you also know that you're escaping this cycle of rebirth, that you won't come back into the world and experience things over and over and over and over again. The way that you do that is the mind is eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance. These are called the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires. I'm going to be talking about this on Wednesday in more detail, but you've purified the mind of these three poisons. More specifically, it's what's called the 10 fetters, which I'm going to introduce you to here. The Buddha discovered these individual pollutions, or these fetters in the mind. I'm going to introduce them to you as part of this course, but these bubble up to what we refer to as the three poisons, or the three unwholesome roots, or the three fires: craving, anger, and ignorance. So you need to purify your mind of these things, and as we go in the course, you'll understand why. And you're also eliminating the ego and realizing non-self. What the ego is like arrogance, boastfulness, pridefulness, putting yourself above other people and looking down on others. As long as you're doing that, you're not going to be able to live harmoniously with other beings, because as you're looking down on people, as you're degrading people, diminishing people, or even if in your own mind you're just judging judging other people and thinking that you're above others and people are below you, this is going to cause you difficulties in your relationships. So in addition to eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance, as you're eliminating craving, anger, and ignorance, you're also eliminating the ego and realizing non-self. So you'll learn about that as you journey on the path to enlightenment. So that's what enlightenment is in a nutshell. The path to enlightenment is a purification of the mind, where you're eliminating the causes and conditions that are keeping the mind trapped in this unenlightened state. Namely, the causes and conditions are the 10 fetters, these 10 pollutions or these 10 taints. I don't describe enlightenment as happiness or ultimate bliss. This is sometimes what you'll hear people say is like, oh, there's this ultimate bliss when you experience enlightenment. What they're actually describing is what we refer to as the jhanas. Jhanas are preliminary phases that the mind experiences before you get to the first stage of enlightenment. If this word jhana translated to just one English word, I would use that, but it doesn't. What jhana is it means meditative absorption or mental absorption, that the mind has absorbed a certain amount of meditation and a certain amount of the teachings. And now as you've absorbed that mentally and meditatively, you've absorbed that in the mind, you start experiencing heightened qualities of mind. For example, when you get into the second jhana, there's no longer a subconscious mind and a conscious mind. It's just one mind, right? So in the unenlightened state, you'll have a conscious mind and you'll have a subconscious mind. So if you've ever been somewhere where you're like talking to somebody and you just blurted something out and you're like, why did I say that? I don't feel that way. I don't think that way. That's your subconscious mind sending things up to your conscious mind, and you just kind of blurted it out because your mind is polluted in the unenlightened state. And the conscious mind is polluted, but the subconscious mind is even more polluted than the conscious mind. And in order to get to enlightenment, you need to be able to have full awareness of the entire mind. So when you get to that second jhana, you experience what's called unification of the mind, or oneness of mind, where you can fully see the entire mind, and there's no longer a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. You're fully conscious of the entire mind. So as you're moving through these preliminary phases, before you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you'll notice certain heightened qualities. And one of the qualities that come into the mind is this excitement. In the jhanas, you get this bliss. And some people are experiencing the jhanas. They think that they're enlightened, so they're describing what they're experiencing as enlightenment, but in reality, they're in the jhanas. And that's why they're explaining it as ultimate bliss, that enlightenment is ultimate bliss. And you also hear some people tell you that an enlightened being still experiences anger or sadness or frustration or these other discontent feelings. The reason why they're saying that is because they think that they are enlightened and they are still experiencing sorrow and grief and pain and displeasure and anger and frustration. And they're describing that an enlightened being still experiences those things. But I can assure you that an enlightened being doesn't experience any anger or sadness or any of those other discontent feelings. So making your way to enlightenment is to eliminate those feelings. Why would anybody spend all this enormous amount of time, effort, and energy learning and developing their mind if they're still going to be experiencing anger and sadness and frustration? This isn't actually true. But some people are experiencing those jhanas, that ultimate bliss, and they're describing enlightenment as ultimate bliss. And they're in the jhanas, you're still experiencing some discontentedness. So people are explaining that an enlightened being still experiences discontentedness, but in reality, they're potentially in the jhanas, and they're just explaining it as enlightenment because they're not understanding fully what enlightenment is. So in the enlightened mental state, you will surely be happy. There's plenty of happiness. We might call that unconditioned happiness, right? I refer to it as joy, that the mind's just always joyful. It's a mental state, where in the unenlightened state, you can only be happy if certain things occur. If my bank account balance is this, I'll be happy. But if it's this, I'll be sad. If it's sunny outside, I'll be happy. But if it's raining, I'll be sad or frustrated. Or if my mom or dad does this, I'll be happy. But if they do this over here, I'll be angry or frustrated. That's what the unenlightened mind is experiencing, conditional happiness, that certain conditions have to be met, and then you will be happy. In the enlightened state, you're just always happy. It's unconditioned. It's joy. It's a mental state that's just always there because you've purified the mind. You've eradicated the causes and conditions that are producing the discontentedness. So therefore, you can reside permanently peaceful and joyful, where the mind's just always joyful. There doesn't have to be any certain conditions met in order for the mind to experience that joy. So this joy, it doesn't arise, it doesn't change, and it doesn't fade away. So by the time you get to enlightenment, you wake up in the morning, you're joyful already. You're just laying in bed, you just woke up, you're already joyful. All day long, you're joyful. And then as you go to sleep at night, you're also joyful as well. There doesn't need to be anything or any condition met in order for you to be joyful. You're just always joyful. And then in terms of the advantages of attaining enlightenment, as I mentioned, the mind is peaceful, calm, serene, and content with joy permanently. You will no longer experience any discontentedness whatsoever. There's this high degree of focus, concentration, clarity of mind, and deep memory. You'll notice that all these discontent feelings are completely eliminated from the enlightened mind. The sadness, the anger, the frustration, irritation, annoyance, guilt, shame, fear, stress, anxiety, the shyness, the loneliness, the boredom, the resentment, even disappointment, and any of those discontent feelings where the mind just doesn't feel good, it doesn't feel comfortable. All of that is eliminated from the enlightened mind because you've purified it of the causes and conditions that are producing those discontent feelings. You'll notice that you'll be able to be polite, kind, friendly, and respectful in all situations. Right now, you might find that that's challenging. In certain relationships, you might have some bitterness. You might have some hostility or animosity towards certain people. And this is just because the mind has certain pollutions. But when you purify the mind of the causes and conditions that are producing these discontent feelings, and you arise the qualities of mind that you can develop, you can get to the point where you're polite, kind, friendly, respectful in all situations. Even if somebody's being disrespectful to you, you'll know that it's unwise to be disrespectful back because anything that you put out is just going to come back to you. So you will have trained your mind deeply to the point where you can control your mind and you won't experience any impoliteness, unkindness, unfriendliness, or disrespect towards others. You won't do that. Your mind it's not possible for you to be able to do that. You'll notice that you're not causing any harm in the world. And because you're not causing any harm, there's no harm coming back to you. And your personal and professional relationships will really blossom. Because you're not causing harm to others, more and more people will feel comfortable spending time around you. In the unenlightened state, the number of people you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer and fewer. As your expectations grow and the things you want other people to do, the number of people you can spend time with becomes fewer and fewer and fewer because it's only a matter of time before you disagree with something that somebody's doing. And you might think, oh, I can't spend time with them, right? But by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be able to spend time with anybody and everybody. Your relationships will really blossom. You'll live harmoniously with all individuals around you. And that's because you've purified your own mind and there's no longer any hindrances or obstacles to you being able to have successful, fulfilling, and satisfying relationships with everybody around you. But in the unenlightened state, we don't know how to do that because the mind lacks wisdom of how to have those harmonious relationships. So you can develop your mind to the point where you can have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. The way that you attain enlightenment is through learning and implementing these core central teachings. And I'm going to essentially be teaching you the vast majority of these in this actual course. That you're going to need to learn the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, and the 5 precepts. I'm going to be teaching you all of these between the next 3 days. You're going to be learning all of these. You're not going to have mastered them by the end of this course, but you'll at least begin starting to learn those. Then I'm not going to necessarily teach you the Brahma Viharas in this course. I do in other courses and other programs, but I'm going to kind of use an example on tomorrow where I'm going to kind of like expose you to the Brahma Viharas a little bit. But you actually learn these in other programs and other courses that I have. I'm about to introduce you to the 10 fetters here in a moment so that you'll understand what the 10 fetters are. And then the 7 factors of enlightenment, we'll probably learn those today as well. And then you're going to be starting your journey to learning extensive meditation training. So in this foundational course, I'm going to help you learn these core central teachings. And then there's other teachings beyond this that you're going going to need to learn in order to get to enlightenment, but this is the core central focus of what somebody's working to build in order to build a foundation in their journey to enlightenment. And as you've heard me share, you're learning, reflecting, and practicing the teachings. You're not believing anything. And you'll see how to do that tomorrow when I start teaching you the 3 universal truths and the 4 noble truths and the Eightfold Path. I'm going to show you how to walk through learning, reflecting, and practicing. All right, so these are the 10 fetters. I'm going to introduce you to what these are and a couple of them, but as you journey in your path to enlightenment, you're going to learn these more and more closely. Just understand that everything the Buddha taught in one way or another, it's helping you to eradicate these 10 fetters. What these 10 fetters are these are the 10 individual pollutions that are in the mind. This is what the Buddha discovered is keeping the mind in the unenlightened state. It's referred to as a fetter because during ancient times, they would attach a fetter around your ankle, and there would be a chain and there would be a ball. This is how they would keep a prisoner trapped in a certain area. Today, we put people in jail cells, but back in ancient times, it was just maybe an open field, and they would put a shackle and a chain and a ball around their ankle, and now this is what would keep them confined to a particular area. And they would call this a fetter, and it would keep this prisoner trapped. So the Buddha referred to these as the 10 fetters, that it's keeping the mind trapped in the unenlightened state. And it's through understanding what these are and the symptoms of them and eradicating them from the mind that the mind moves to this enlightened mental state. And you can see that's occurring because your mind becomes more peaceful and more joyful. There's the lower fetters, which are the first 5, and then there's the higher fetters as well. And as I mentioned, all of his teachings are helping you to eradicate these. He doesn't necessarily call it out and explain it, but even something as simple as the 5 precepts are helping you to eradicate these 10 pollutions in one way or another. So let me introduce you to some of them so that you can understand a little bit about what they are. This personal existence view, what this is where the mind in the unenlightened state has this misunderstanding or this confusion, this lack of wisdom, this misperception, that it thinks that this body or this mind is you and who you are as a person. So the mind clings to this body or this self-image, or it clings to the self-identity in the mind, thinking that this is who you are. So when you're in public space, if you're being perceived the way you want to be perceived through your self-image, you'll get pleasant feelings. So if somebody compliments you and says, wow, your hair is so beautiful, or wow, your jewelry looks so amazing, it really brings out the shape of your face, or something like this, you'll get these pleasant feelings like, wow, they're talking about me, they're talking about this body. But then it's only a matter of time before somebody says something negative or degrading or disparaging about this physical body. And when you hear that, you'll feel frustrated, you'll feel angry perhaps, or sorrowful, or you'll feel grief or some other irritation or annoyance or something like this. And this is because the mind's clinging to this body, thinking that this is who you are. And then say you look in the mirror and you see a mole or a wrinkle or a gray hair, or you see that you're losing your hair, or some other thing like this. If the body isn't being perceived in the world the way the mind wants it to be perceived, then the mind can be easily shaken up by this. So if you've ever gotten a little extra fat here or there and you're like, oh man, I really don't like that, this is the mind's personal existence view, that it's discontent because of this pollution, this misunderstanding, this confusion. And then there's self-identity. This is like your culture, your ethnicity, your nationality, maybe your sexual orientation, maybe your job or occupation. Your mind might adopt it a certain identity, like I am Chinese, or I am American, or I am Canadian, or I am Brazilian. Any of this I am, like I am a police officer, or I am a Buddhist. Right? Even those labels of Buddhist. If you have that in your mind, when you hear somebody say something complimentary about any of these things, you'll feel pleasant feelings, happy, excited, elated. But then when somebody says something degrading or disparaging, you'll experience the painful feelings. So this personal existence view, the mind is clinging to this body and this mind, or the self-image and the self-identity, thinking that this is who you are. And it's only a matter of time before the mind gets shaken up by this. So there is a physical body, there is a mind, and it's come together for this existence, but this isn't who you are. This isn't you. And this is very challenging oftentimes for the unenlightened mind to first start understanding, because We've been brought up in the world to think that this is us, this is who we are. So we're going to be talking about this more tomorrow, because I'm going to be talking about the solution to this, which is to realize non-self. So you're going to need to learn this a little bit more. And oftentimes when students first start learning about it, they don't understand it 100%. So I'm going to go through it in a lot more detail tomorrow. But just to introduce you a little bit to what this fetter is, this is what personal existence view is, where the mind's clinging to this body or this mind, thinking that this is who you are. Okay? And now the second one is called doubt. What doubt is where you have doubt about the Buddha, the teachings, the community, your teacher, or your own ability to attain enlightenment. And it's common for people to have doubt when they come to the path to enlightenment. Someone might doubt, did this person, the Buddha, even exist? Do his teachings lead to enlightenment? Is this community going to be helpful and encouraging to help me to be able to get to enlightenment? Can my teacher even get to, help me get to enlightenment? Or can I, as a individual practitioner, even do it? I don't even know if you can do it, perhaps. Maybe that's what you're thinking in your mind. You might have this doubt that's in there. And the way that you eradicate doubt is you don't eradicate doubt through blind belief or faith. The way you eliminate doubt is through investigating the teachings, through examining them. By you examining the teachings of the Buddha and not believing them, and then you reflect on them to independently verify them, and then you practice them, and you see the improvement to the condition of your mind slowly but surely, you'll get to the point where you have no doubt that these teachings are leading to enlightenment. You won't be enlightened yet, but you'll have seen enough progress to the condition of your mind and the condition of your life that you'll have no doubt. You'll be like, hey, I know these teachings lead to enlightenment because I've seen improvement. I've had people come into this class after just 2 days that they had learned on Monday, they learned on Tuesday, the Four Noble Truths and the Eightfold Path. And then on Wednesday morning, they came to class and they're like, David, I got an email this morning that normally would have shaken me up and I would have been so upset. But I understood and I didn't get upset, and I was completely calm and peaceful when I saw that email. I understood. So there's people that as few as 2 days can see improvement to the condition of their mind. So that's how you eliminate doubt, is through investigating and examining the teachings, not through blind belief. And it's common for people to have doubt when they first get on the path to enlightenment. I had a lot of doubt when I first got on the path to enlightenment. But what I did is I harnessed it. I turned it into an inquisitive mind. I was like, you know what? Yeah, I doubt the teachings of the Buddha 100%. I don't know whether they're true or false. So I rolled up the sleeves, I sunk my teeth into it, and then that's how you eradicate this doubt, is through investigating the teachings, turning it into an inquisitive mind where you're deeply interested in learning and understanding the teachings. And that's how you get to the elimination of doubt. And then the third one here is wrong behavior and observances. What this one is there's two different aspects of it. What wrong behavior is that in the unenlightened state, there's certain speech and actions that we do that are causing harm to others. And as long as we're putting that harm out, this harm is going to come back to you. You're not going to be able to get to a peaceful and joyful mind and a peaceful and joyful life as long as you're causing harm to others through your speech and your actions. So by the time you eliminate this particular aspect of the fetter, you will have purified your moral conduct to a certain point where you're no longer practicing what's in the Eightfold Path. In the Eightfold Path, the Buddha is explaining to you to practice right speech, right action, and right livelihood. And you would have purified your moral conduct to that level of degree that's described in the Eightfold Path. Remember, these aren't rules or commandments. This is helping you to be able to awaken to the wisdom of how you're causing harm to others. And now this harm is going to come back to you. So if you're trying to improve your relationships and develop harmony in your relationships where you can be at ease and you can be peaceful in all your relationships, as long as you're talking in ways that is harmful, and as long as you're speaking to people in aggressive and hostile and bitter ways, for example, that's all just going to come back to you. You're not going to be able to experience the peace and the joyful mind and the peace and joyful life if you're causing harm, being hostile and aggressive or bitter or harsh with other people. So that's why here the Buddha is saying, okay, in order to get rid of this particular fetter, you're going to need to have a certain level of moral conduct. And this is explained in the Eightfold Path. And as you're practicing that moral conduct, you'll see your relationships improve significantly because you're not causing harm to others through your moral conduct any longer. And then what wrong observances is this is where in the unenlightened state, there can be the belief that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship is helping you to improve your life somehow. This is a fetter, this is a pollution, where the mind will think that, if this monk sprinkles some water on me, somehow that's going to make me feel better and bless me. Or if I eat this wafer, or I drink this wine, or if I take this water and I sprinkle it on myself, this is somehow going to improve what I'm experiencing in life. And this is a misunderstanding of what's truly going on in the unenlightened mind. What's truly going on in the unenlightened mind is it lacks wisdom. I'm going to be talking with you about this on Wednesday morning when you understand the 3 poisons of craving, anger, and ignorance. That if you understand the ultimate goal is to cultivate wisdom, and this is what transforms the mind, then you understand that there's no rites, rituals, ceremonies, or worship that can give you wisdom. And a lot of times, by the time somebody comes to learn with me, they've already eliminated this part of the fetter, that they've done enough rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship in other places that they realize that, yeah, those things didn't improve my life. They didn't make anything better. They didn't enhance my life. And the reason why is because there wasn't any wisdom that was cultivated. And you're still making perhaps the same unwise decisions that is producing the same unwholesome results. So by the time you eliminate wrong observances, you deeply understand in your mind that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to lead to enlightenment. And whether you choose to go do those things or not, it's up to you, right? Maybe you're at home, you're with your family, maybe they like to go to church or the synagogue or the mosque or something like this, and they would like to do something like that, right? Okay, go with them. Go enjoy your time as a family. It's not like if you got some water sprinkled on you from a monk that you're going to melt, like the Wicked Witch of the West or anything like that. Instead, it's just that your mind needs to deeply understand that rites, rituals, ceremonies, and worship isn't going to lead to an improved condition of life or your mind because you haven't cultivated any wisdom. That's how you eliminate this particular fetter. Then there's others here that you learn at different times, but I'm just kind of introducing you to what these are. I'm not really teaching it to you yet because it's just a foundational class. I'd like you to just know that this is kind of the engine underneath of everything. This is what the Buddha is guiding you to eliminate. And then we'll share with you a couple of them over here, though. What conceit is where the mind has arrogance or pride or boastfulness, putting yourself above others or below others. This is just as damaging to your life and to your mind if you put yourself below other people. By the time you get to enlightenment, you need to view yourself as being equal amongst everybody, right? This conceit where the mind is almost looking for a pecking order, this comes from our previous existences in the animal realm. When we were in the animal realm, we needed conceit. We needed to know who's the alpha male and alpha female of our wolf pack, because they are the ones who are breeding. Those are the ones who are teaching us how to hunt. And if we didn't know who the alpha male and alpha female were, we wouldn't learn how to hunt. We wouldn't learn how to survive. When we were a herd of elephants, we needed to know who's the matriarch of our herd, because she's going to show us where the food is. She's going to show us where the watering holes are. She's going to show us the migration paths of how to migrate and how to stay alive. If we didn't know who the matriarch of our herd was, we would have difficulties as an elephant. So in our animal existences, these countless existences, our mind was conditioned to have this pecking order, and we needed that. But now that we're in the human world, the mind is holding on to this conceit, and it's holding on to this idea of a pecking order. And oftentimes in the human state, the mind is looking for who's above me and who's below me. And they're looking for this pecking order. And this is just going to hinder you from living harmoniously with all beings. And you would like to get to the point where you realize that you don't need that pecking order. You don't need to be above people. You don't need to be below people. Because putting yourself below people is just as damaging. If you have a boss, for example, that you think is so high above you, when you go around that boss, you're going to be shaken up. And it's going to be hard for you to represent your work in a professional manner. Or say you meet some celebrity, right? Or some politician. You might be shaken up when you're around that person because you're in such awe about this person. But if you can look at everybody as being equal, you'll be able to interact in the world in a much more cohesive manner. If you've ever had this conceit, which every unenlightened mind pretty much does, if you go into a social situation where in some situations you think you're above people, and in other situations you think you're below people, well, if you're in mixed company, your mind's having to constantly figure out Who am I above and who am I below? Because when I talk to these people who I feel like I'm above, I talk to them in one way, and I talk to these people who are below me or above me in a different way, right? And now your mind's having to constantly switch and figure this out. It's exhausting to the mind. But if you just look at everybody as equal, then you treat everybody the same. You walk down the street, you see a street sweeper on the street, sweeping the street. Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. How are you? Nice to see you. Good morning, right? You see the president of your country. Hello, sir. Hello, ma'am. Good morning. How are you? Right? You just treat everybody equally, the same. It's so much easier for you. Your mind can be at ease when you treat everybody equally. But with this conceit, you'll have this boastfulness, this pride. You'll put yourself above people or below people. And typically, when someone has ego, they're usually rejected by other people, and they're usually pushed aside. And you're not interested in being pushed aside like that with any kind of arrogance or ego. You're interested in relating to all beings harmoniously. So by getting rid of conceit, you'll be able to associate with all people harmoniously, not putting yourself above or below people. And this one takes a lot of time to eliminate. So this is why I introduced it to you here, because there's certain tools and techniques that we teach to be able to eliminate every single one of these fetters. In fact, in August, I'm going to be teaching a retreat where I'm going to be spending an entire class period on every single fetter. So each individual fetter, I'm going to be spending an entire class period where I'm going to explain what it is. I'm going to explain the symptoms of it. I'm going to explain how to eliminate it. And then I'm going to explain how to know that you've actually eliminated it. So we'll talk about an hour and a half about each individual fetter. So each of these, you'll need ultimate details to know what they all are, but just understand this is the engine behind what's actually causing the mind to experience discontentedness. And this is what the Buddha is guiding you to eradicate and eliminate. And ultimately, the 10th fetter is like the fetter of all fetters. This is the whole reason why the mind is in the unenlightened state. It's referred to as ignorance, but nowadays this word ignorance is kind of like a derogatory word or demeaning, degrading word. I would never refer to anybody as ignorant, neither would the Buddha. But this is the word that's being translated. So I'm using this word to be able to help people connect with other people's teachings. But the phrase that I like to use here is the unknowing of true reality. That's what this is actually referring to. That in the unenlightened state, it just doesn't understand what it doesn't understand. It lacks wisdom. It's confused. It has misunderstanding. It has misperceptions. It doesn't understand true reality. For example, in the unenlightened state, we don't understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. We typically blame the anger and the frustration on other people. But by the time you awaken and you have wisdom, you understand that your mind is causing your own discontent feelings. Somebody else isn't causing that. But because of this ignorance or this unknowing of true reality, the mind doesn't understand that in the unenlightened state. And this is why you will see, by and large in the world, people are all blaming each other for what it is that they're experiencing, rather than accepting responsibility for their own feelings. It's this ignorance or this confusion, this delusion, this misunderstanding, this lack of wisdom that's in there, that the mind doesn't understand things like the 3 universal truths, the 4 noble truths, the Eightfold Path, the 5 precepts, the 3 wholesome roots and the 3 unwholesome roots, the natural law of karma, the cycle of rebirth. All of these different things are not understood in the unenlightened state, and that's what's keeping it trapped in the unenlightened state. So it's eradicating that through cultivating wisdom. That's what's going to ultimately eradicate it from the mind, is by not believing anything, but learning, reflecting, and practicing. So I'm going to pause here for a bit and see if you guys have any questions before I go on. If you guys have any questions here, if you could use the microphones, that would be great. For those of you guys online, if you could put your questions into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or in Zoom, you can electronically raise your hand and ask any questions that you like. You guys have any questions here? No? Okay, let me see if we have anything online. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions online either. Okay, so now what I'm going to share with you is the 4 stages of enlightenment. Because as you're eradicating these 10 fetters, your mind moves through these 4 individual stages. And the Buddha refers to them in this way: stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. We probably refer to them more easily as the first, second, third, and fourth stage of enlightenment. But these are actually named this way for a reason: stream enterer, once returner, non-returner, and arahant. And I'm going to teach you what these are and how to actually move through them. There's also something called a Buddha, which I'm going to teach you what a Buddha is as well. Okay, so what a stream enterer is, and the reason why the Buddha refers to it as a stream enterer, is that just like a log enters a stream, it's going to eventually get to the ocean. It's just a matter of time, right? It's going to make its way to the ocean eventually. The same thing is true, that once you get to the first stage of enlightenment, you're going to get to enlightenment. It's only a matter of time. Just like that log is eventually going to get to the ocean, you're going to eventually get to enlightenment. To get to this first stage of enlightenment, you need to eliminate the first 3 fetters: personal existence view, doubt, and wrong behavior and observances. And by the time you get to that first stage of enlightenment, you'll see a significant decrease in your discontentedness. It's going to be just a mere fraction of what it once was when you were off the path to enlightenment versus when you're in that first stage of enlightenment. You'll see the significant reduction in your discontentedness, among other qualities that you're going to experience by the time you get here. On the way to the first stage of enlightenment, your mind would have already moved through the 4 jhanas, but then you will enter into the first stage of enlightenment. And once you're in that first stage of enlightenment, your mind won't regress backwards. It's impossible for your mind to regress backwards by the time you get to the first stage of enlightenment, because by this point, you've eliminated doubt. You have no doubt that these teachings are leading to enlightenment. You've seen enough progress that you'll have eliminated your doubt. And from that point forward, you'll continue to be dedicated and diligent and determined to make your way to enlightenment, gradually, slowly, but surely making your way to enlightenment. So this first stage of enlightenment is very important, because from that point forward, your mind won't regress. And if you die in that stage of enlightenment, you're going to come back a maximum of 7 times into the human realm, but you're going to come right back into the human realm. Not immediate rebirth, but when you come back into the world, it will be in the human realm. So you don't have to be reborn 7 times. It's just a maximum of 7 times. So if you die in that stage, that's what's going to occur. And this can be independently verified for people who have experienced the observation of their past lives. They can observe that this is the case. So after you move through the stream entry, and you don't have to die in the stream entry, you could actually have gotten to the stream entry or the first stage of enlightenment and move then into the once returner or the second stage of enlightenment. From there, you would have already eliminated the first 3 fetters, and then you would have thinned out the central desire and the ill will, where you've kind of reduced it. And because of that, you're experiencing a significant reduction in your discontentedness. You've already experienced that in the first stage of enlightenment, but by the time you get to the second stage of enlightenment, you're also experiencing a reduction in your discontentedness because you've minimized your central desire and your ill will. And if you die here in this stage of enlightenment, you will come back to the human realm one more time, and then you will experience enlightenment in that next rebirth. Right? So you can actually make all the way up to the second stage of enlightenment, and some people choose to hang out there for a while, because in this stage of enlightenment, you're still having sexual contact, for example. You're still having sexual relationships because you still have some sensual desire. But it's not the way it was at one time, where there's like this longing, yearning, and chasing and wanting it so bad. It's reduced by this point. So if you're noticing a reduction in your sexual cravings, this is because as the mind gets closer and closer to enlightenment, you'll notice this reduction in your sexual cravings. Because oftentimes the mind is longing, yearning for sexual contact. It's wanting that pleasure. But as you're training your mind to eliminate the craving, desire, attachment, you'll see that that temporary pleasure ultimately ends up in painful feelings as well. Because when you can't get sex, you're going to feel agitated or annoyed or frustrated. But depending on what age you are and where you are in your life, you might hang out here for 10 years, 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, up to you. Everybody's on your own journey to enlightenment. And if you get to this second stage of enlightenment, you and your partner, you guys will be having a great relationship. You won't be bitter and harsh and hostile and argumentative with each other. You'll have most likely a sexual relationship, but it'll be a very enhanced sexual relationship where you're not just out for your own selfish desires, you're interested in having the other person be pleased as well. So some people make their way to the second stage of enlightenment and they kind of hang out there for a while. But then ultimately you're going to get to a point where you're going to see more and more peacefulness coming into the mind, and you're going to value that more than the sexual relationship. You're going to see that your life and your relationship is more than just sex. Sometimes people put a lot of emphasis on sex and they think that that's what their life is all about. But you'll see that this peace and this joy coming into the mind is actually more beneficial and it's more enjoyable than sex. I know that might sound kind of far-fetched right now, but there is something in the world that's actually better than sex. It's called enlightenment. And this enlightenmental state is permanent when you get there. And your mind isn't going to experience this up and down and up and down. But with sex, you end up experiencing this pleasure, this intense pleasure, but then within a couple of hours or a couple of days, it's faded away. And by the time you get to enlightenment, you'll experience permanent peace and permanent joy. So then there's the third stage of enlightenment that we refer to as non-returner, where you've eliminated the first 5 fetters, the lower fetters. And if somebody dies here, they will not be reborn into the human realm. They will be reborn into the heavenly realm. And then from there, they will actually get to enlightenment from the heavenly realm. So here, as a non-returner in this third stage of enlightenment, you're usually experiencing discontentedness about once every 3 months, once every 6 months. You'll experience a little bit of ickiness or a little bit of irritation here or there. It'll be very minor. It'll be very infrequent. It'll be very insignificant. It might even only last for 5 seconds or 30 seconds, and it's gone. So in this stage of enlightenment, sometimes people can become complacent in their practice. So if you make your way to the third stage of enlightenment, you need to remain very dedicated and very diligent that you continue to develop your practice. Because even if you're experiencing that little bit of ickiness every once in a while, the mind is not yet enlightened. And you're going to need to be reborn into the heavenly realm, attain enlightenment from there, and then escape the cycle of rebirth. Because the heavenly realm is not a permanent existence. So all these realms in the cycle of rebirth, it can all be independently verified. But like I mentioned before, you may not have the wisdom of how to do that right now, but just understand that this is what is being taught in order to help you understand what's happening with these 4 stages of enlightenment. And then the last stage, which is called the 4th stage of enlightenment, an individual has eliminated all the 10 fetters. This is referred to as arahant. This is a word that was around during the lifetime of the Buddha. Nowadays, we would probably just say enlightened being, right? But some people still use this phrase or this word arahant. You might hear this. This is what an enlightened being is. By the time you get to this stage of enlightenment, there's no discontentedness whatsoever. You've eradicated all the 10 fetters. There's no residual clinging or craving. There's no ability for these fetters to ever arise ever again. And this being is now enlightened. And they won't experience rebirth anywhere in the cycle of rebirth. But what happens next to an enlightened being once they die? The Buddha left it as an undeclared teaching. He didn't share whether there is something next or there isn't something next. He just left it as an undeclared teaching. And I have my various reasons why I think he left it as an undeclared teaching. And he specifically said it's an undeclared teaching because there's different times in his teachings where he says, remember what I taught. I taught this. And he says, remember what I did not teach. I did not teach this. And one of the things that he didn't teach is what comes next for an enlightened being after they attain enlightenment. But by the time you get to enlightenment, your mind's going to be so peaceful and joyful, it's not going to care. You're not going to care what's next. Because if there is something next, it's either as good as what you're experiencing now or better. And if there isn't something next, so what? Who cares? You're already peaceful. You're already joyful, right? So the goal of this practice, it isn't to do a bunch of good things in this life and then hope something good happens when you die. Instead, you're getting to something good now. You're getting to something wonderful now in this life. And you can see your minds doing that, which is very unique, right? Usually when we're being taught things like this, it's like, okay, believe a bunch of these things, and then you're going to get your reward later. You're going to get some benefit later when you die. Well, at that point, it's too late, right? You've already died, right? what the Buddha is guiding you to is to experience the peace and joy right now in this life. And you can see your minds gradually doing that and getting closer and closer to that in this life. It's very rare to be able to experience that you're experiencing the benefits now because you're doing the work now. And it comes through cultivating wisdom. Okay, so these are the 4 stages of enlightenment that the mind moves through as you're eliminating these fetters. And you'll get more and more familiar with these as you progress in various courses and classes and retreats that I share. And then in terms of what a Buddha is, I think most of you guys have maybe learned this with me in other classes or courses, but I'll just kind of help you to maybe recall what I shared here. What a Buddha is a Buddha is an individual who independently discovers the teachings that lead to enlightenment without any teachers or any guides. And that's what Siddhartha Gautama did. He went off in the forest for 4 years and figured out how to train his mind. He got to enlightenment by himself without the help of any teachers or any guides. He then dedicated the rest of his life to sharing those independently discovered teachings with countless people. And countless people got to enlightenment during his lifetime. From the age of 35 to the age of 80, for 45 years, he shared his teachings. And by the time he died, countless people had gotten to enlightenment. And then he preserved his teachings in such a way that countless more people got to enlightenment after his death. These are the 3 main criteria of what make a Buddha a Buddha. But then there's other criteria too. This 4th one here is that a Buddha has a profound memory. Even a person who is to become a Buddha, they haven't yet become a Buddha, they have a very profound memory. And the reason why is because their mind functions slightly different than an average unenlightened being. Everybody's mind in the human world functions the same way in terms of the natural laws of existence, but in the unenlightened state and the way that the human mind functions by and large by an average person is you have a certain capacity in your mind. It's like a hard drive. You have like 500 gigabytes or 1 terabyte of hard drive space. And when you get to a certain capacity, when you reach the capacity, you've got to delete old files in order to store new files. And this is why, like in the last 5 or 10 years or so, you kind of remember like what you've been up to and what you've been doing. But if you think back to your childhood, you just have kind of spotty memories because you've had to delete your old files in order to store these new files because you have a limited capacity. But a person who's going to become a Buddha, they actually don't have that. They don't have that limited capacity. They have an unlimited capacity to be able to store information in their mind about their current life and their past lives too. Other people can understand their past lives and observe their past lives, but a Buddha has such a deep, profound ability to remember things in an unlimited way that they can accumulate wisdom over multiple lifetimes and their last lifetime to ultimately get to enlightenment on their own without the help of any teachers or any guides. This is the main attribute that allows them to actually get to enlightenment by themselves, that they have an unlimited capacity in their mind. They have a profound memory. Then a person who is a Buddha can quickly determine the condition of somebody else's mind and then be able to help that person to be able to purify their mind and actually get to enlightenment. The only reason why a Buddha would do this is to be able to help their students. They don't just go out on the street reading people's minds and like, by the way, here's a teaching for you. You need to do this and you need to do that. They're doing this with their students to be able to help their students. So if their students come and they spend time with with a Buddha would be able to observe the quality of their student's mind and then be able to provide them teachings to be able to help them to then be able to get to enlightenment. So this is one of the qualities or attributes of an individual who's a Buddha. And then lastly, one of the qualities of a Buddha is that they're a living, breathing, walking example of their teachings. They teach a certain thing and they actually practice that thing too. Because a Buddha is wise enough not only to get to enlightenment by themselves, but they're wise enough to understand that their students are learning just as much through their spoken words as they are through their actions. That a Buddha or a teacher needs to teach you how to practice right speech, but they also need to practice right speech too, so their students can see what that looks like and they can learn from it. They need to practice right action, they need to teach right action, but they need to practice it too. So you should see in a Buddha, but also in a teacher, you should be able to see them practicing right speech and right action. You should be able to see that they're loving and kind and compassionate and warm and gentle and friendly. You should be able to see these kind of qualities in an individual who's sharing these teachings. So a Buddha is going to be a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. He's not going to teach one thing and do something completely opposite, because his students are learning through his own practice and the way he interacts in the world. So a Buddha is a living, breathing, walking example of his teachings. And his students are learning just as much through observing him in the world as they are through his own spoken words as well. So a Buddha is very rare in the world. The last one that the world currently is aware of existed over 2,500 years ago. There's some people who would tell you that if you get to enlightenment, you are a Buddha. Or some people will tell you you're a Buddha right now. That's what some people will tell you. But the Buddha himself didn't say that. Other people might say that, but the Buddha himself didn't say it. He talks about how rare it is that a Buddha would exist in the world. So you're going to need teachers, you're going to need guides, you're going to need people to help you along the way. But remember, you're your own individual practitioner. You're always looking to reflect on the teachings so that then you can independently verify them and get to wisdom. But these are the criteria of what makes a Buddha, and we refer to them as perfectly enlightened. Because they don't have teachers, they don't have any guides, the only thing that they understand in terms of enlightenment is how to get to enlightenment. The way that a Buddha awakens is as they're working to get to enlightenment. If a certain meditation or a certain technique leads to improvement to the condition of their mind, they know that that's the path to enlightenment. But if they try a certain meditation or a certain technique and it doesn't work, then they discard it and they get rid of it. So by the time they get to enlightenment, all they understand in terms of the path to enlightenment is exactly how to get to enlightenment. They have deep, profound wisdom of how to do that. It's kind of like the inventor of the automobile. The inventor of the automobile probably knew every nut and bolt on the automobile that they built because they built it from the ground up. It's the same thing with a Buddha. They're going to understand exactly how to get to enlightenment. Where somebody who learns from a teacher how to get to enlightenment, maybe 80 or 90% of what they understood actually leads to their enlightenment, but they're still holding on to like 10% or 20% of things that really didn't lead to their enlightenment, but they're still kind of holding on to those kinds of things. But by the time somebody is a Buddha, and which is very rare, they're perfectly enlightened, that what they retain in terms of wisdom is exactly what it takes to get to enlightenment. So this is one of the reasons why they can be so effective in helping countless people get to enlightenment during their lifetime. Okay, so this is what a Buddha is. So one of the ways to learn about what enlightenment is to understand what enlightenment isn't and how to determine that you aren't enlightened. Okay, so this will be one of the ways to help you to understand what enlightenment is. So one of the best ways to know that the mind is not enlightened is it will still be experiencing conditioned feelings or discontentedness. Remember, these are conditioned feelings. So conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings, or neither painful nor pleasant. Conditional happiness, meaning I am happy because it's sunny outside, or I am happy because I got a raise, or I am excited because I got a new car, or I am excited to be in this class, or I'm so excited to have met you, right? There's a condition that needs to be met, and this is the pleasant feelings. But then because of that conditional experience, when that condition changes, now the mind moves to the sadness or the anger or the frustration. This is what we're going to talk about tomorrow. So an unenlightened being is going to be experiencing conditional feelings where the mind experiences annoyance and frustration and disappointment and other discontent feelings like this, where the mind's going up and down at different times in your life. Sure, you'll have peacefulness and joy here and there, but it's only a matter of time before your mind goes up or it goes down or it goes up or it goes down. This is the conditionality of these feelings, the loneliness, the boredom, and all these others. One of the ways to know that the mind is not enlightened is that there'll be a craving or a desire to tell other people that you're enlightened. If you have a craving or a desire to tell other people that you're enlightened, then you'll know that your mind is not yet enlightened. So one of the best ways to know someone's not enlightened is they're going to tell you they're enlightened. So if somebody walks up to you and says, hey, by the way, I'm enlightened, ain't I so great? Well, that's ego. That's their arrogance. That's their boastfulness. How could you be enlightened if you're still arrogant and boastful, right? So an enlightened being is going to be humble. Their mind's going to be so peaceful and so joyful. Why do they have to go tell everybody else that they're enlightened? If you're so enlightened, if you're so peaceful and you're so joyful, go be peaceful and joyful. Why you need to come around here looking for admiration, right? If you're still desiring admiration from me, your mind's not enlightened yet. So an enlightened being is not going to go out in the world and profess to other people that they are enlightened. The Buddha himself did tell people that he was enlightened and that he was a Buddha, but he lived in a very different time than us. People didn't know what enlightenment was. People didn't know what a Buddha was. So he had to explain to people, okay, I'm perfectly enlightened, and here's what a perfectly enlightened being is. Here's what a Buddha is, and I am a Buddha, right? He needed to explain it to people, but he did it very humbly. He did it very peacefully. He did very rarely refer to himself as a Buddha. He had this other word called the Tathagata. This is what he referred to himself as. He called himself the Tathagata. What this word means is it means one who discovered the truth, or one who shares the truth. That's what the word Tathagata means. But you'll see him occasionally mention that he's a Buddha or that he's perfectly enlightened. You'll see this in his teachings. And that's because he needed to help humanity to understand what this is. But now that we understand what it is, if somebody walked around claiming that they were a Buddha or that they were enlightened, right away we're like, yeah, you're not enlightened. We know, because you still have ego, you still have arrogance, you're still looking for admiration. So if you or somebody around you is doing that, then you'll know that your mind is not enlightened. If you notice complacency, like a lack of motivation, a dullness, a lethargic condition, a lack of initiative or enthusiasm, a lack of willingness to do something, then you'll know your mind is not enlightened. If you're kind of like dragging around, it's like, God, I really don't want to do that, right? That's the complacency, the dullness, the lethargic condition. An enlightened mind is going to be uplifted. It's going to be bright. It's going to be radiant. It's going to be willing to do something. There's going to be enthusiasm and ambition in the mind. There's going to be this energy in the mind. It's not this unfettered, right? It's not like, it's not this so excited, but it's not this dull, this lethargic, complacent thing either. The mind's in the middle where it's uplifted, it's bright, it's radiant. There's a willingness to do something. There's enthusiasm and motivation and ambition in the mind. There's this energy, right? This is what an enlightened being is going to experience. So if there's complacency in the mind, then the mind's not enlightened yet. Okay? Any questions at all on what enlightenment is? Yeah, if you could use that. Yeah, we have some people online here.
The question I asked was, at what stage of enlightenment do you think you're at?
Okay, so an individual who is enlightened, they're not going to say that they're enlightened, because otherwise it would be clear that they're not enlightened. But an enlightened being is also not going to say that they're not enlightened either, because that would be lying, right? So in my opinion, what an enlightened being would do is they would be more interested in helping others to understand what enlightenment is, so that they can help themselves to be able to get to enlightenment. So an enlightened being is not going to say they are enlightened, but they're not going to say they aren't enlightened. And instead, I would think that what an enlightened being would be more interested in helping others to understand what enlightenment is, so that they can experience enlightenment. What some people like to do is they ask questions like, when is the last time you were angry, right? And somebody could answer that. Or, do you experience frustration any longer? Or, when's the last time you experienced that? I was at a retreat 2 years ago, and they asked me, they said, David, when's the last time you were angry? And I said, I don't know. It's been so long, I actually don't remember. And they said, well, what would your son say? And I was like, well, there he is. He had just walked in the room. He was at this retreat. We were in America. He was with me. And I said, there he is. You can ask him. So in front of all the students, there was plenty of students there. They said, when's the last time you saw your dad angry? And he basically answered, in 2017 is when he saw me angry the last time. Because if you're going to get angry and frustrated, it's usually going to be with someone that you're close with, because you have a deeper attachment to that person. So if you've eliminated all your cravings, desires, attachments, your mind is enlightened, you're not going to get angry and frustrated any longer. And it's the people that are closest to you that are going to see your anger and frustration the most. So that's why they wisely asked him, when's the last time you saw your dad angry? So that's the last time that he says that he saw me angry. But I wouldn't say to anybody that I'm enlightened. teach my students to not even convince themselves that they are enlightened. When they get to enlightenment, is don't even convince yourself that you're enlightened. It's kind of like these fetters that I just introduced you to. It's kind of like the game whack-a-mole. If you remember whack-a-mole, right? When the mole pops its head up, you kind of whack it and it goes back down. Well, if you convince yourself that the game's over, you're going to put your mallet down, and next thing you know, here comes some more whack-a-moles. It's not over yet. And here they keep rising up. So if you convince yourself that you're enlightened, right, and that these fetters are completely gone, when they're starting to rise up and you're starting to see symptoms in your mind, you'll miss it. You won't see it because you'll think that you're enlightened, and your mind isn't actually enlightened. But if you stay diligent and dedicated, never convincing yourself that you're actually enlightened, if you see a symptom, because sometimes they spread out as you get into that third stage of enlightenment, it can be 3 months or 6 months. You can think like, wow, I'm enlightened because I haven't been angry for 3 months or 6 months. I haven't been frustrated or irritated at anything. And you might think you're enlightened, and then 6 months will go by and there'll be this little bit of ickiness in the mind. And you're like, nah, I'm enlightened. That's not any kind of fetter in my mind. My fetters are all gone. You'll convince yourself that you're enlightened and you'll miss that. And then your mind actually isn't enlightened, right? But if you never convince yourself that you're enlightened, when you see that little bit of ickiness, it's like, what's that? There's a little bit of dust in the corner. Let me get rid of that little dust in the corner. So you won't ever hear me say that I'm enlightened. But if you ask any of these other questions, like what is enlightenment, or when's the last time you experienced this or that, or any of these other things, I'd be pleased to answer those kinds of things for you.
Do you have any students that you would consider to be enlightened or at those various stages?
Yes. So, my wife is either enlightened or very close to it. There's other students that have been studying with me long term that are in these 4 stages of enlightenment. I don't track the students and try to discern exactly what student is where, because it's your own independent journey. But I can tell through the questions that students ask, and I can also tell by the experiences that they're having, because I don't teach everything that you're going to experience on the path to enlightenment. There are certain things that we don't teach you, because then when you tell us certain things about what you're experiencing, we'll know where you're at on your journey. So based on the questions that students ask and some of the experiences that they have, I can tell that they're in one stage of enlightenment or another. And they can tell for themselves too. They know. Because like there's students, like there was somebody who talked with me recently. She's been studying with me for 8 months, and she's noticed a 50% reduction in her discontentedness just in 8 months, because she knows that she was having anger and frustration and agitation in certain situations, and now there's like this 50% reduction. She's seeing all this improvement in her relationships and things like this. So there's so many countless students that study with me. I wouldn't be able to keep track of every single one, but I know that there's plenty of students who are experiencing that progress. My wife, my son, other people like this, that enlightenment is real. It's a real thing that you can experience, and you can see your mind's gradually getting to that. And the more that you understand what enlightenment is, you'll be able to see it in other people. You'll be able to see the qualities of enlightenment, because you would have worked with your own mind to eradicate those pollutions. So when you see other people without those pollutions, you'll be able to identify. And this is where, like Thai people, they have the ability to identify other people who are enlightened. They know how to determine that. But that's not the goal of the practice, to go around and determine who's enlightened and who's not. There's not like a list anywhere. But if you develop on this path, you will get the ability to be able to discern other people that are either enlightened or very close to it, because you've done that work on your own mind. So you can see it in other people's minds too. Mm-hmm. Yeah, you're welcome. You have a question, Rachel?
Say you are, or a person's working on eliminating the fetters, and maybe even progressing through the jhanas, but they don't get to the point of like a stream enterer, and they die before that. What part of the cycle of rebirth are they in? Can I assume they are reborn into like a lower realm? It's a 2-part question, sorry. So if they're born into a lower realm, let's just say like an animal realm, I'm assuming your mind regresses when it's there, and then once again, like, what part of the cycle of rebirth are you in? I feel like it's much more difficult to then progress once you're back into a human life.
Yeah, so there's 5 realms that the Buddha teaches and that you can independently verify. There's the hell realm, the animal realm, the afflicted spirit realm, the human realm, and the heavenly realm. In the human and heavenly realms, you can get to enlightenment in those realms. You can develop your mind. The heavenly realm is not an ideal existence because those beings only experience exclusively pleasant feelings, so they tend to be complacent in their development on the path to enlightenment. In the lower realms of hell, animal, and afflicted spirit, they can't get to enlightenment from those existences, and they're going to need to be reborn into a human or heavenly existence in order to get to enlightenment. And all of us have probably been in these realms at different times, and now we're in this human realm with the ability to get to enlightenment. So in the jhanas, there's the ability to be able to be reborn back into the human realm, even though you're not in the first stage of enlightenment. It's not like there's just one door and you have to go through that door in order to get back into a human existence or into a heavenly existence. Even in the jhanas, you can be reborn into the human realm or into the heavenly realm, but getting to the first, second, third stage of enlightenment, you are for sure going to be reborn into the human realm as a stream enterer, a once returner, and then as a non-returner, you will for sure be reborn in the heavenly realm. And then as an enlightened being, for sure, you're not going to be reborn anywhere in the cycle of rebirth. So in the jhanas, there's the potential to be reborn in human realm or the heavenly realm, but there's also the potential for other things to occur as well. If you're reborn into the lower realms, yes, it's very challenging to get back out of those realms and get back into a human existence or heavenly existence. The Buddha describes it as a prison, that once you're in the hell realm or the animal realm, it's very challenging to get out. And the reason why is because these natural laws of existence are affecting every single being, whether you're aware of it or not. And in an animal existence, a lot of animals sustain their life off of killing. So as an animal, you're killing, you're stealing, you're having sexual misconduct, you're going around having sex with lots of different animals, and that's just the way you survive. That's all you know as an animal. So it's very challenging to escape out of that. That's why, like, an elephant is very well revered in Thailand, because it's the closest animal to being reborn into the human realm as any other animal in the animal world. It typically doesn't kill. It can kill and it will kill, but it doesn't typically kill, and it doesn't kill for food, right? It eats plants and vegetation. Elephants tend to be loving and kind and compassionate, very warm. They tend to be very dedicated to their family, right? They have certain qualities that you can see in an enlightened mind. This is why they have deep memory. Elephants have very good memory, because in terms of the animal realm, they're the closest to being reborn into the human realm as any other animal in the animal world. But like a snake or a lion or a tiger or something like this, they're killing in order to survive. So it's very hard for them to get back out of that animal existence. But eventually they will bop around into countless different animal existences, and then eventually they will make their way into a human existence to be able to get to enlightenment. But not everybody in the human realm decides that that's what they would like to do. So the potential is to be reborn down into these lower realms. So does that answer your question? Yeah, you're welcome. You have a question?
Is what you are calling the realm of afflicted spirits, is that what is sometimes called the realm of of hungry ghosts?
Some people refer to it that way. Yep, the hungry ghost or the ghost realm. Or the afflicted spirit realm. So this is like a formless being that some people can see, but some people can't see, and maybe you've never interacted with that kind of being. But yes, that's what we would refer to as a ghost or an afflicted spirit or a hungry ghost. The reason why people refer to them as hungry ghosts is because they tend to have a lot of craving. So an individual who, say, was like building a house and the house wasn't completed yet, and then they die, right? They still have craving, and now they're holding on to this house and they don't want to leave it. So we'll call that they're haunting the house. In reality, what they're doing is they're just craving, they're just clinging, they're holding on to this house and they don't want to let it go. So that's why they call them hungry ghosts, because they have craving and they're holding on to certain aspects of the world. Not just material possessions like a house, but relationships too. These afflicted spirits can sometimes follow people around that they were once close to when they were in the human realm, and now when they're in the afflicted spirit realm, they're holding on to that relationship and they can't let go, and they're still hanging around. And that's why they get that name hungry ghost, because of their significant amount of craving. And that's why you would be reborn down into those lower realms based on your craving. And now you can extinguish those cravings and then make your way back to the human realm. Any other questions? Let's see if we have anything online. Let's see what we've got here. Got some things coming in YouTube. See, I am not seeing your screen shared. Oh, so sorry. I apologize. I didn't click on that for the live stream. I apologize for you guys that are on the live stream. If you guys are ever having difficulty seeing the slides, you can just come into Zoom too and raise a hand and then let me know. I apologize that I didn't have that on there for the live stream. Okay, I'm not seeing any other questions anywhere. Let me just check Facebook just to make sure. All right, I don't see any on Facebook either. All right. So those of you guys that are on the live stream, since you didn't see any of these slides that I was using, if you go to our website, which is buddhadailywisdom.com, and you go to free books, you're going to see towards the bottom, there's a link or a section that's called free resources. Even for you guys here, I have all these slides in there as a PDF. And I even have it designed as a workbook too. So if you would like to print it out and use it to take notes, you can use it that way. But you can also access these slides through the website by just downloading the PDF. So all the courses and retreats that I teach, I have all these slides up there. So you guys can access these from our website. Okay, so I apologize for you guys on the live stream. Okay, so would you guys like to learn some more? Would you guys like to learn another 10, 15 minutes before we go to lunch? There's one other topic here that I will typically share. It's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. This will take me about 10 or 15 minutes to share it with you. It's a tool, it's a technique that is used as you get further and further on the path to kind of fine-tune the mind. Sometimes based on the name of this teaching, people think it's to determine if you are enlightened or you aren't enlightened. But what it is a tool to fine-tune the mind. It's called the 7 factors of enlightenment. And these are the words of the Buddha. He says, "It is, monks, when the 7 factors of enlightenment are developed and cultivated in this way that they fulfill true wisdom and liberation." What he's saying is, it will help you get to enlightenment. That's what liberation is. And then what he shares is, when the mind's sluggish, that's the time to practice the enlightenment factors of investigation, energy, and joy. When the mind's excited, that's the time to practice the enlightenment factors of tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. And then the enlightenment factor of mindfulness is always important to practice. So let me explain to you guys what these 7 factors of enlightenment are. Is the first factor of enlightenment, which is a tool or a technique to be able to help you move your mind to enlightenment, is to practice mindfulness. We're going to talk about this tomorrow with the Eightfold Path. This is where you're developing awareness of the mind. In the unenlightened state, we tend to not be aware of the mind. This is where we kind of plow through the world, knock down trees. We're just making decisions based on our own selfish desires. We're kind of knocking down the trees in the forest, burning up the forest. And we kind of get to a certain point and we look behind us and all the trees are knocked down and we smell smoke. And we're like, who's lit the fire? Who knocked down all those trees? Well, it was you that knocked down all those trees based on all your decisions through selfish desires, that you weren't aware of the mind. You didn't have awareness of what was going on in the mind. So part of this path, you're developing mindfulness or awareness of mind, and that's what you'll learn tomorrow in the Eightfold Path. And the Buddha teaches that you should always be practicing mindfulness from the moment that you first start waking up all day long, all the way until you're even falling asleep, practicing mindfulness. Because as you're falling asleep, if you've ever had your thoughts invade you while you're falling asleep, this can be very intrusive to your own mind. And tomorrow I'm going to teach you what to do when you're having those thoughts coming into your mind at night when you're trying to fall asleep. And if you have mindfulness and awareness of mind, you'll be able to take action to fix that so that you can just get a really good night's sleep. By the time you get to enlightenment, you'll be sleeping like a baby, very good quality sleep. And mindfulness is going to help you because you need that awareness of your mind to be able to purify the mind of these unwholesome qualities. But you're also going to need this awareness of mind in order to cultivate the wholesome qualities too. So that's why mindfulness is the first factor, because you need to be practicing that all the time. But then when your mind is sluggish or dull or complacent, you need to practice the enlightenment factor of investigation, energy, and joy. What investigation is where you have dedicated and determined study of the teachings of the Buddha, that you're diligent in investigating the teachings. This is going to help you to move out of complacency, because when the mind's complacent, it's dull, it's lethargic. It doesn't want to meditate. It doesn't want to read the book. It doesn't want to come to class. It doesn't want to talk to the teacher. It's dull, it's lethargic, it's complacent. So the way you get it out of that is by doing just the opposite, is pick up a book. Come see your teacher, come to the temple, have a personal discussion, do some meditation. So by investigating the teachings, that's what's going to uplift your mind out of that complacency. And that's where you'll notice the enlightenment factor of energy coming in, where there's this motivation, this encouragement, this ambition, this willingness to do something. That will start to arise in the mind. As you're learning these teachings, you're like, oh my goodness, this is the answers to what I was looking for. Wow. You'll start noticing this energy coming up in the mind. And then you'll notice this joy, which is unconditioned joy. It's not based on any condition. It's unconditioned gladness that is in the mind. And you'll start noticing that starting to arise, and it'll bring your mind out of that complacency. Then there's this enlightenment factor of tranquility, concentration, and equanimity. This is going to bring you from that excited condition. It's going to bring the mind to the middle where the mind can be calm. Right? That's what the tranquility is, that calmness and the composure, that stability, the relaxed state, the stillness of mind. The concentration is the focus, being able to focus on a single object. And then the equanimity is the calmness and composure, the evenness of temper, that the mind can be calm and steady and stable. Right? So that's what these three enlightenment factors are going to be doing for you. It's kind of like fine-tuning the mind. If you think about you being as a human being, and on this path to enlightenment, you're interested in becoming a better and better human being. It's kind of like a sculpture. If you had a big piece of raw wood and it was like a log, and you're going to turn this into a beautiful sculpture, when you first get started, you're probably going to use a hatchet or an axe to start chunking off big chunks of wood, because you got to chuck off wrong view and wrong intention, wrong speech, wrong action, wrong livelihood, wrong effort, wrong mindfulness, and wrong concentration. These are this is the 8 factors of the Eightfold Path. You got to chuck off these big chunks of wood. And that's what you're usually focused on at first when you first get on the path to enlightenment, is really developing the Eightfold Path as the core central teaching. But then as you get going with that, you're maybe kind of 6 months, a year, year and a half into your development on the path to enlightenment. Just like when you're making that sculpture, you're going to need to come in with a finer tool, like maybe like a razor blade or an X-Acto knife. You're going to need to put the creases in the eyes and the eyelashes, the creases in the face, in order to create this beautiful sculpture. The same thing's true when you're developing your mind, that you're going to need this fine tool to come in and fine-tune the mind. So with your mindfulness or awareness of mind, where you're noticing the mind's complacent or dull or lethargic, you lift it up by investigation, energy, and joy. And then when you're noticing your mind's excited and overactive, you calm it down with the tranquility, the concentration, and the equanimity. And this is that fine tool to come in and fine-tune the mind and bring it to the middle. The way that your mind functions is, it's kind of like if you had a piece of wood and you had a steel rod, and if you were grinding this steel rod back and forth on the wood, when you first start, it's going to bounce around a whole lot, because there's no groove there yet. It's going to bounce around a whole lot. But then as you grind this steel rod back and forth on the wood for longer and longer period of time, eventually you're going to get a groove into this wood, and it's going to get deeper and deeper and deeper into this wood. And it's less and less likely to pop out of that groove. But when it does pop out, you're going to notice it right away, and then you're going to bring it back to the groove and keep on grinding, and you get a deeper and deeper channel in the wood, and eventually it won't ever pop out because it's just too deep into the wood. Well, the same thing is true with your mind, is that initially your mind might be bouncing around, like in meditation or in your daily life, your mind might be bouncing around a whole lot. But then slowly but surely, as you are working to keep your mind in the middle for longer and longer periods of time, you get this groove where the mind's used to being in the middle for longer and longer periods of time. And then eventually you get to the point where there's so much development in the mind, there's so much focus and concentration that it doesn't pop out, that it's impossible for the mind to pop out. But initially your mind's kind of bouncing around a whole lot. So you need to develop this groove where the mind can feel comfortable being in the middle. And that's what the 7 factors of enlightenment are doing for you, is helping you to lift your mind out of that complacency and bring it to the middle, or bring it out of the excited state into the middle, so that now more and more your mind can stay in the middle, and you'll be able to experience more and more focus and concentration and calmness and composure, so that then you'll be able to stay in that mental state for longer and longer periods of time. And as your mind is able to do that, it won't bounce around and move around into different places. Your mind will just be able to stay focused and concentrated and clear all the time. And it's these 7 factors of enlightenment that are going to help you to do that. So where you see your mind is being complacent, you would like to lift it up and bring it to the middle. Where you see the mind is excited and overactive, you would like to calm it down. And this is the tool that's going to be able to help you to accomplish that. So if you're able to stay attentive to the mind with your mindfulness, then you can invoke whatever tool or technique that you need in order to bring the mind to the middle. This is where the Buddha kind of gets the reputation of being like a doctor, that there are certain symptoms that you experience in your mind, and then there's a certain prescription that you apply, a certain antidote that you apply, and then you experience the healing. So some people describe the unenlightened mind like a disease or an illness, and then there's going to be certain symptoms, and then you apply a certain antidote or a certain prescription, and when you apply that prescription, then you experience the remedy or the solution or the result of better health in the mind. So where some people might think about the teachings of the Buddha like a religion, I don't think of it that way. Essentially what he did is he took human psychology and he put it into common terms that anybody and everybody can understand. He didn't say he discovered a better way of, or he didn't say that I discovered a new religion. He said I discovered a better way of life. That's what he shared. And he provided these teachings and this guidance of what did he do in order to get to enlightenment, so that then you can experience the same thing. So when you learn and you develop and you practice and you gain the wisdom of these tools and techniques, and then you employ them in your life, you'll be able to see the results for yourself. So this isn't a bunch of rites and rituals and ceremonies and worship and hoping something good happens when you die. It's learning tools and techniques like this that you then maybe get introduced to in a class like this, and you don't fully understand it, but you ask questions, and then as you implement it into your life and you start practicing it, that's where you see the real results. So this week, during this course, it's about learning, intellectually understanding. It's about starting to reflect, starting to independently verify the teachings, and then slowly but surely you start integrating them into your life, and you start practicing these tools and techniques that the Buddha is providing you to fine-tune your mind. And this is one of those tools and techniques that you're going to need in your journey to enlightenment, to fine-tune the mind and get it to be in the middle, so you get this nice groove where your mind isn't just dull and lethargic, but is also not overactive and excited, and you can bring the mind to the middle where it can be focused and concentrated and clear and steady and stable all the time. Okay? Any questions on the 7 factors of enlightenment? Remember, those of you guys online, you can ask questions by putting that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. Looks like we have a question here on Zoom. Let's see. The question is it destiny exist? Are there animals more spiritual than humans? Okay, so these are 2 different questions. So you're going to learn on Thursday, when we talk about the natural law of karma, that there's no such thing as destiny or fate. This is what oftentimes people believe in the unenlightened state. They think about good luck or bad luck or destiny or fate. This is to prescribe to the thought that your life is pre-programmed, that you have some destiny or you have some fate, and you're basically locked in and you can't do anything to change that. And this would be a very self-defeating and self-sabotaging way to think, but unfortunately this is sometimes what's taught in the world. And what the Buddha helps you to be able to see is that anything you experience in life is a result of your decisions. That when you make certain unwise decisions, it produces unwholesome results. And when you make wise decisions, it produces wholesome results. So by being able to see that what you experience in life is a result of your decisions, then you can cultivate wisdom. And if there's anything that you particularly don't care for in your life, you can just cultivate wisdom, make different decisions, and improve it. Whereas if it was destiny or fate that you're experiencing any particular thing, you're locked in. You can't change it. There's nothing you can change about your life, right? And this would be very sabotaging to the mind. So you would like to get to the point where you understand that it's not destiny, it's not fate based on the things that you're experiencing in life. It's decisions that you're making. And you would like to cultivate more and more wisdom to make wise decisions so that it produces wholesome results for you. And then you can improve anything and everything that's going on in your life. So if there's something you particularly don't care for, you need to cultivate wisdom about why that thing is occurring in your life, and then make different decisions so that you can experience different results. And this is how you can escape any kind of unpleasantness that you experience in your life. And then the second question you're talking about or asking about is, are animals more spiritual than humans? I don't measure and compare beings like this to figure out those kinds of things. Measuring and comparing one being to the other would be the mind judging other beings and either looking down on beings or looking up to beings. It's better to just look at all beings as equal rather than trying to measure and compare like who's more spiritual and who's less spiritual and these kinds of things. But an animal, as we were talking, it doesn't have the ability to cultivate its mind to the point of getting to enlightenment. An animal certainly can cultivate its mind, but left to its own devices, it doesn't have the wisdom of how to do that. More and more animals are coming in contact with humans, and we are helping them to learn and grow and develop. And this is why we're seeing an explosion of beings in the human realm. We're seeing this shrinking of animals in the animal realm, and we're seeing this explosion of beings in the human realm. Scientists say that there's only 1% of the animals that exist today are the total animals that existed at one time. So that means 99% of all animals that once existed are extinct. And this is what scientists share with us. So the animals that we see today only represents 1% of what existed at one time. So the animal realm has been continuously shrinking and the human realm is expanding. And this is because animals are coming in more contact with human beings and they're learning and being domesticated and things like this. Like there's this example that I can share with you in Cambodia. There's a rat that they trained to sniff out landmines. And this rat by itself wouldn't have learned how to do that because in Cambodia, they were having war for many years and there's a lot of landmines that's still buried and people could just be walking around and then boom, this landmine goes off and now the person is dead or maybe they're injured in some way that they can't walk any longer or something like this. So eradicating Cambodia of landmines is very helpful. So this rat was trained because it's very light. If the rat walks around, it won't set off the landmine and it can sniff out these landmines. And then when it identifies where a landmine is, the humans can go unbury it and diffuse it. Right? So this rat by itself wouldn't have been able to figure that out. But with human intervention, they were able to help this rat learn how to do this. But it was the rat's choice to do this. It's not, not every single rat is going to be willing to learn how to do this. But this particular rat learned how to do that. And when it eventually died, because a rat doesn't live very long, I suspect that it was reborn into the human realm from that existence, right? Because it ended up finding 100 landmines during its life. They kept track and it found 100 landmines. That means it saved a lot of lives. There's a certain amount of loving kindness and compassion that rat would have had to practice in order to do that. So animals themselves, they can't get to enlightenment. They can cultivate their mind and improve their mind, and they can be reborn into the human realm with an opportunity to get to enlightenment. But in terms of measuring and comparing, I wouldn't suggest that an individual do that and instead just look at all beings as equal, whether we're human or animal. While those beings have less opportunity to cultivate their mind and develop their mind, we can still look at them as equal and not look at them as a lesser being, and that we're a higher being. Even though we call the realms the lower realms and the higher realms, when I think about beings, I just think about everybody as being equal, including hell beings or afflicted spirits or any of these beings. We just can have love and compassion and kindness and respect for all beings, no matter who they are. Okay, great questions. All right, let's see. We have some stuff coming in here on YouTube as well. As a Buddhist, how do you explain, I'm sorry, the browser isn't showing that last word. How do you explain the evil in the world? Okay, so let me just open this up here. So anything that happens in the world that is unwholesome, it's coming from decisions made by an individual being. And when an individual's mind is polluted with the three poisons, which we're going to learn about on Wednesday, craving, anger, and ignorance, an individual is going to be making unwise decisions. And those unwise decisions are going to produce unwholesome results. So any kind of evil or unwholesome things that you see in the world, you can trace it all back to what we refer to as craving, anger, and ignorance. Any decisions that are being made, any calamity or evil that you see in the world, that's based on decisions that people are making. They're making decisions through their mind. So if the mind is polluted with these 10 fetters, and kind of more generally, the 3 unwholesome roots, they're going to make decisions that are unwholesome and unwise. And when you're making unwholesome and unwise decisions, it's going to produce unwholesome results. So whether it's an individual experiencing some individual issue, or whether it's global conflict and war, all of this can be traced back to the 3 poisons, right? Say I'm a leader in a country and I see another land and I say, I want that land. I want that land. Give me that land. And if you give it to me, I'll be happy. But if you don't give it to me, I'm going to be angry and I'm going to be frustrated. Well, if somebody says, no, you can't have our land, this is our country. Oh, really? I'm going to send my soldiers in there and I'm going to kill you and I'm going to try to fear you into giving me that land. This is craving, desire, attachment, longing, yearning. And then when the mind doesn't get what it wants, this anger arises, this frustration, this agitation. And the mind thinks that the problem is external. And if I just scare these people, if I fear these people, they will give me my land. I want this land. And where this is coming from is what we call ignorance, or the unknowing of true reality. So whether it's an individual problem with your mom or your dad or your brother or your sister, or some global issue in the world, it can all be traced back to individual decisions that human beings are making that is causing certain unwholesome results in the world. And that's how every single thing is occurring in the world. So when each person in the world purifies their mind, getting more and more to the point where more and more beings are enlightened, we're going to see a much more harmonious world. People in the world will be loving and kind and warm and friendly and compassionate and respectful, but it's going to take a lot of time for that to occur. But you don't need other people to become respectful in order for you to get to enlightenment. You can train your mind to get to enlightenment. You don't need to have your inner feelings based on what other people are doing. And that's what the Buddha is going to teach you to do, is how to not base your inner feelings on what other people are doing. That's what the unenlightened mind's doing, is my mom is sad, so I'm so sad too. Or my dad is frustrated and I'm so frustrated too, right? Or my coworkers are angry, so I'm angry too, right? This is what the unenlightened mind does, but you can learn how to not base your inner feelings on what's going on externally. Or there's a war in the world. I'm so angry, because of this war. Well, that's the mind having a conditioned feeling, but you can evolve beyond that. So all this evil and unwholesome things that you see in the world, it's all coming from one's own individual mind. And when you purify the mind, you'll see that you won't experience that evil in your own life. And then as more and more people in the world practice, then you'll be able to see that the world becomes a more loving and kind place. Okay, it looks like we have some more coming in as well. Oh, so just thank you for your answer. Thank you for answering my question. You're so welcome. Pleased to help you. Okay, let's see if we have anything on Facebook. Don't see anything there. And looks like we have everything on Zoom. Let me check. Yeah, that's everything. So any questions here? Do you guys have any questions you guys would like to ask about the 7 factors of enlightenment? No? Okay. Well, this brings us to lunch. It's basically 12 o'clock. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start at 1:30, which is an hour and a half from now. So for all of you guys online, if you'd like to rejoin us in an hour and a half, we're going to go have some lunch. So feel free to take your time to find a place that you would like to eat. You're also welcome to come back here to the temple. Sometimes people go eat and they come back here and hang out, or they go walk for a walk somewhere in the city. Some people come back here and take a nap. You might even see me doing that. I'll lay out some cushions and maybe take a nap from time to time during our course. So feel free to use this space as your own. The way a temple works is that it doesn't belong to anybody. This isn't my classroom. It doesn't belong to me. So it doesn't belong to anybody, but yet it belongs to everybody. What a temple is it's a learning center. It's a cultural center. It's a place that you can come into and you can find comfort here, and you can find teachings that are going to be able to help you. So this is a community center that everybody takes care of. So you'll sometimes see students here, they'll be sweeping the floor, they'll be cleaning the bathroom, they'll be changing the trash can and taking the trash out. Feel free to do those things yourself if you like. So this temple, it doesn't belong to me. It's not my classroom. It doesn't belong to me, but yet it belongs to all of us so that we can use it for our learning and for a place to meet and come together and develop. So as you go to lunch, if you'd like to come back here and rest and relax, the doors will be open. You're welcome to help yourself in. If you'd like to take a nap, feel free to do that. If you'd like to go for a walk. But I'm going to start back up at 1:30. And when we start back up at 1:30, I'm going to teach you guys Buddhist chanting and how to chant the way that we do our chanting. And then we're going to do a meditation session in the afternoon together as well. So enjoy your lunch, and perhaps I'll see you guys afterwards at 1:30. Okay? Thank you so much. Sawadee krap. Sawadee krap.
Thank you again for watching. Enjoy your meditation. Look forward to seeing you online and answering any questions that you might have. Thank you so much.